Today, we are going to see just how depraved, twisted, and terrifying human beings can be. Yes, there may even be psychopaths or serial killers walking around you every day, people whose smiles seem completely normal, while a monster hides inside their minds. Given the opportunity, they can turn someone's life into a nightmare. The most frightening part is that you may pass by them every day without realizing how dangerous they truly are. Take this case, for example. It all began with an emergency call. On the other end of the phone, a woman spoke in a trembling voice, saying that a young woman was being held captive inside a house with a chain around her neck. At first, the police found the claim difficult to believe. It sounded like something out of a movie, not real life. But when officers arrived at the scene a few minutes later, they realized the situation was far worse than they had imagined. The entire house was unnaturally silent. The windows were boarded up with wood, the doors were secured with screws. It looked as though someone inside was being hidden from the rest of the world. Then, suddenly, a terrified scream from a woman echoed through a broken upstairs window. The police immediately knew that someone was indeed being held captive inside. When they finally entered the house, what they saw looked like a scene straight out of a psychological horror film. A woman stood there with a heavy metal chain fastened around her neck. The chain was not merely wrapped around a post, it had been permanently secured to the floor with specially installed iron fittings. Someone had clearly taken the time to design a system for keeping another human being imprisoned like an animal. To the officers, the entire house resembled a torture chamber. And that was only the beginning of the horror. The investigation revealed that the man had not only kept the woman captive, but had also completely broken her psychologically. He threatened her every day, beat her, and repeatedly told her that if she attempted to escape, he would kill her. The woman later told police that she had become so terrified that she eventually believed she would never leave the house alive. But the true extent of the monster's cruelty had not yet been uncovered. Police later learned that the house was being used for far more than imprisonment and abuse. The man, identified as Moise May, allegedly forced the woman to have sexual relations with other men in exchange for money. In other words, he had abducted a human being and gradually reduced her to a state of complete psychological submission. She was kept under his control while being slowly broken down mentally and emotionally. What makes the story even more disturbing is that to an outsider, the man appeared completely ordinary. And that is perhaps the most frightening reality of all. Often, real monsters do not look different from anyone else. They live among us, appearing just as normal as everyone around them. Another horrifying case occurred in Ohio, USA. At first, police believed it was merely a routine kidnapping or assault case, but within hours they realized they had stumbled into a deeply disturbing and twisted world. The case began when a young woman told police that a couple she knew had lured her to their compound. There, she claimed she was beaten, threatened, and subjected to severe abuse. She somehow managed to escape and seek help from law enforcement. However, at that point, police still had no idea how dark the case would become. As investigators continued their work, they arrived at the secluded compound belonging to TJ and his girlfriend, Morgan Smith. When they got there, they discovered that the couple had already fled into the nearby woods. What they left behind sent chills through the officers. Inside the property, police first noticed what appeared to be an ordinary playpen, the kind typically used for children. But on closer inspection, they realized it was actually a cage. A wooden gate had been installed on top, and the sides were tightly secured with zip ties, making escape almost impossible. Inside that cage was a 3-year-old child. There were spoiled milk bottles, foul-smelling waste, and conditions so filthy and disturbing that it appeared the child had been confined there for hours at a time. The child had been kept confined there for long periods of time. As the police began removing and examining the items, the officers were horrified. They were witnessing firsthand just how cruel a human being could be. As they continued searching the house, they discovered even more disturbing things. Sharp knives, drug paraphernalia, and numerous dangerous objects were scattered throughout the property, items that could have seriously harmed or even killed the children at any moment. The entire house seemed like a toxic nightmare, yet this was the environment in which those young children were being raised. Eventually, the police found a strange journal containing notes about punishment, control, and a set of twisted rules. At that point, investigators realized this was not merely a case of abuse. It was the dark world of a deeply dysfunctional and disturbed family where people had gradually lost their humanity. But the horror did not end there. Another terrifying incident occurred in a rural area of Ohio. At first, police believed it was an ordinary robbery or homicide case. They had no idea that the investigation would gradually lead them into the world of a serial killer, a person who entered people's homes and murdered them with such brutality that he seemed less like a human being and more like a predatory animal. The case began when a woman named Sarah Evans entered her friend's house and screamed in terror. Lying there was the blood-soaked body of 59-year-old Benny King. Blood covered the entire room. There was blood on the walls, the bed, and even along the hallway floor. Police later discovered that the elderly man had not been stabbed once or twice, but 33 times. Investigators determined that the attack had started in the bedroom. Benny had somehow managed to crawl away in a desperate attempt to save his life, but the killer followed him into the hallway and finished the attack there. The wounds on his hands showed that he had fought desperately for survival until the very end. However, what puzzled investigators was something else. Although the house had been thoroughly ransacked, very little had actually been stolen. Only the kitchen cabinets had been opened and searched, as if someone had been frantically looking for something. This led police to believe that the killer had likely been searching for money. During the investigation, the names of two brothers, Justin and Johnny, emerged as potential suspects. They were known in the area for drug-related problems and financial difficulties. Just days earlier, the elderly victim had reportedly chased them away from his property at gunpoint. Naturally, police suspicion quickly focused on them. But then another strange detail surfaced. Around the time of the murder, witnesses reported seeing an old gold-colored Hummer speeding away from the area so fast that the screeching tires echoed throughout the street. Inside the vehicle was a young man. Police later learned that a local individual known as Jaybird drove a vehicle matching that description. Jaybird was actually Justin. Everything seems to point in his direction: the drugs, the financial motive, the previous conflict, and the mysterious vehicle. All the pieces appeared to fit together. Yet, investigators still did not realize that this might be more than a single murder. A few weeks later, another killing occurred on the opposite side of town. The crime scene displayed the same brutality, the same bloodshed, and the same disturbing pattern. That was when police began to suspect they might be dealing with a serial killer. Sadly, there are countless individuals with deeply disturbed mindsets who hide behind the appearance of ordinary people. It is often impossible to know how much darkness someone may carry inside. That is why it is important to remain aware of your surroundings and take precautions to protect yourself and your loved ones. Thank you.